This is one of my more relaxing hours that I have every month. It's an opportunity to dial it back from all of the talk about government and politics and issues and what people argue about and actually talk about fun stuff. I mean, stuff that's really important to a lot of people in
This is the
Idaho.
happy stuff, the fun stuff, the good stuff. This is where the good stuff is, Bill.
Kelton Hatch in studio with us from Idaho Fish and Game. And we do want to point out, of course, he's here for the full hour. And that means, of course, as well, that if you've got a comment or question, he's here to take those. And he'll give it his best opportunity, and generally he does that. Sometimes he has to go look something up, but that's worthwhile too, and he can get back to you after checking all of those things out. And so I get a lot of messages. We have a listener in Rupert, and she will email me a lot of questions. So if she's got them today, we'll try to get those because I told her I think the last time, couple of times you were here, we'd be getting back to some of this stuff. So I just wanted to point out, got to click onto my email to make sure that I can read those too as well. That's the other important part of this. Um, we had a meeting last night in Jerome. We talked about it on air yesterday briefly, and this is because you're looking for some public input. You had some people show up.
Pretty skinny crowd though, Bill.
You
Pretty
know,
skinny crowd. We've had two moose, sheep, and goat, our trophy species or once in a lifetime species meetings, and we've had a total of 6 people show up. And
one
so,
one was over in the Minidoka area,
yeah,
right?
Burley, we had it there at the Burley in
Minnecasia
Perkins,
then.
in Minicasia, and so Perkins has got a meeting room in there. And then we had 3 people show up over there, and then we had 3 people show up last night. But we have been having a lot of people go online and make comments, and so that helps us too. But I guess I'm just going to go quickly through that if I have a second on some of the proposed changes. I mean, we went through all the. If you want to see the information, you can go to Fish and Game Facebook page. It's Fish and Game Magic Valley. There's a. You'll have to scroll down because about a week ago I posted a video on there. Or you can go to our Idaho Fish and Game website and then click on Magic Valley and it's posted on there. And it just goes through our proposals. It shows you the harvest success that we've had in all our areas for moose and goat and bighorn sheep. The big changes that we're looking at proposing is we're looking at putting a couple U tags in um, on the Jim Sage hunt over by Burley.
Mm-hmm.
The population's really growing over there. We're starting to get a lot of sheep moving out of that range. There's a concern for the sheep wandering too far from that range because it's a really small, isolated piece of ground. But there's also possibilities for disease contact around there from domestic animals, and so we're trying to limit their movement as much as we can from that area. We had to kill a bighorn sheep that would had left that range and was down on Black Pine and had been in a band of domestic sheep, and we was concerned that he may go back to the herd and could bring a disease with him, and so we put him down, and that's our basic policy. And it's no fun to do that. I mean, because you're not. I love hunting bighorn sheep, but it's not fun when you're just doing it like that as a disease control method. So we're looking at putting that. We're also looking at adding another ram tag to that area. And then 54, just right here. You've been up in the South Hills
Right,
before, you know quite a
right.
bit, Bill. We've got a remnant band of sheep up there. About 25, 30 years ago, we planted sheep up in there. They've just never taken hold, whether it was disease issues or whatever. We just are not getting a solid, sustained population. We put thousands of dollars into this, and sportsmen have never been able to reap any benefit from it. So we're actually looking at proposing a couple tags down there because there's a few sheep that wander in. Again, we're concerned about them wandering off and then wandering back to a population like over in Unit 46 or back over to Jim Sage. And so I think we're going to let sportsmen try to reap some of the benefit and hunt those down there. But you can go onto the website and comment on those proposals. Please do. That's how we get our direction. We know what we need to do biologically, but we want to see how sportsmen want it handled. And so get on there and fill some surveys out.
And now we're talking off air. Now's the time to do it because after decisions are made, the input isn't quite is doesn't have the same impact.
It's always frustrating because you go through and you come up with something, you put it down, and then it comes out in the rules, and people come out of the woodwork because they're ticked off because of what you've done. It's like, well, we've had 3 or 4 meetings, we've had a month and a half of public comment. Get involved now if there's an issue. If you're concerned about it. If you want to see it go through, get involved because we just don't want to hear the positive. I mean, the people that are negative going on there and commenting, because otherwise, well, we'll say, well, that's not going to work. If you're in support of it, get on there and fill it out. And so, yeah, we're just looking for public comment.
Got a couple of things we want to talk about as well, just related to this time of year. But before we get there, talking about the holiday and all, but before we get there, you have a note here on the rundown today about composition counts.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. What we're doing right now is we're flying deer um, in Unit 45 and 54, and they've got a helicopter down out of 55 down by Burley. And what the composition counts are is we fly over, like over in Unit 45, we looked at almost 900 deer. We had roughly, well, we had from that count about 28 bucks per 100 does. So we got a good strong buck population down there. And then we had a little over 50 fawns per 100 does. So we've got a growing population down there. Um, in the South Hills was close. It's about the same, but I mean the numbers are a little bit higher. It was about 31 bucks per 100 does with about the same amount of fawns, about 54, 55. And so deer populations are strong. Our goal is on both of those units to be right around 30 bucks per 100 does, 25 between 20 and 30 in 54, and then 45. We've always been pushing for around that 30 bucks per 100 doe mark. We know that there's enough bucks in there that the does will have fawns this next year, and you only need about 1 or 2 bucks per 25 does, or 4 bucks per 100 does to ensure that. But it just gives us an idea, a trend. We try to fly these units every other year or every 3 years, just to note to see what is going on in the population. Later on in the year, we'll go down and do some more flights, and it'll be population counts. And we fly certain areas, and then we'll go down and try to estimate populations in each of these zones. But we have to get the comp counts done before the antlers fall off the bucks.
We want to point out, speaking of a deer, you have a note here: trapping and radio collaring deer. Now, is this just one type of deer, or is this a wider program?
Just it, it's all we'll be trapping mule deer across the state of Idaho. And what we do this for is we'll trap a few bucks to see where their migration routes are. We've been trapping bucks in 54, 55, 56, 45 for the last several years. We've had a few. It kind of gives us an idea on how far they migrate. We're using GPS tracking collars on a lot of them. We've been doing it with elk. We've been doing it with deer. Um, the elk and deer are kind of a survival deal because we'll put it on fawns and we'll see how many of those fawns survive through the winter for the number. Like if we have 25 fawns in the South Hills and we have none of them die, we know we had a pretty good survival. If we have 1 or 2 die, we can extrapolate roughly what's going on, and we can do this across all our units in the state. So if you see a helicopter around the 1st of January, that'll be us up there running deer into drive nets, and then we'll be spooning them, cuddling up with the deer while we put radio collars on them. It's not quite like working cattle. Deer are a lot gentler. They're smaller animals. Bones are a lot. You have to be pretty cautious with them. And I kind of jest in spooning, but You don't nail on them. Like if you catch a calf or you're branding a calf or something like that. I mean, you put a lot of weight on them. Big, heavy boned animal.
Mhm.
Uh, Deer, you kind of lay the side and hold them and put a blind over their eyes while we put radio collars on them. We weigh them. We'll go in and we'll ultrasound the does, some of the does to see if they're pregnant. We'll also draw blood from other does to see what their overall health status is and see if they're pregnant through blood drawing. And we'll be trapping deer the first week of January. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
And I wonder. I think I mentioned this to you before. A friend of mine, I went to high school with him. He ended up. He still works in upstate New York, but he ended up putting some radio collars on some of the deer in the area that they would trap. And he was showing me a map. The last time I was home visiting was about 10 years ago, but he was showing me a map, the radius that they I mean,
Oh, it's amazing.
yeah, they don't stay close to home.
No, they don't. Our South Hills deer are fairly good. I mean, they'll wander between, like Highway 30 and a few miles down into Nevada, which is still 60 plus miles, so it's a fairly good jaunt. But like our deer up by around Cary, Idaho, we'll have deer that winter in Arco, going up in Lost River Range, and then they'll go clear over to Fairfield to have fawns
Wow.
across all the mountains. They don't walk down the flat road. I mean, they're going through the hills and dells, and they'll go clear over there to fawn. And then you've got deer that are going there to fawn, and then you've got other deer that are leaving 43 that are going clear down by Hamer in the winter. And so it's kind of like just groups of wherever mama took them. They've been doing this for generations, and so that's why it's critical to have this information as we're growing. You just
Hmm.
talking to me a little bit about Idaho's the third fastest growing state in the nation, which doesn't make me too happy. I mean, I'm glad to see people being successful with businesses, but it sure is nice. I hate to lose our rural lifestyle and become a major, and this is a lot of people to me, I mean, but you know, so that when we're building houses, when we're building subdivisions, when we're building new roads and infrastructures, we know what ground these deer are utilizing, and hopefully that we can step in and we do comment on different building projects in order to assure the future of wildlife because we know the migrational corridors that they're using.
The day will come when from Provo all the way through the Magic Valley up to Boise and the Treasure Valley, it'll just be one run-on city.
Yeah, and I won't live here then.
We wanted to mention Kelton Hatch is in the studio with us. He's here for the hour this morning. And in the next segment, if you've got a question or comment for him, feel free to give us a telephone call. We've got 24 right now as we come up on 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. And telephone number, if you don't know it and you want to save that and have a question or comment coming up, as we say, 736 0300. That's 736 0300. I just want to make a quick mention with the Christmas holiday now 5 days away, 4 days away, somewhere in that neighborhood. A
It's
lot of
coming really fast.
it is going to be here on, and then it'll be gone. And a lot of people don't get together with family. And if you've got family members who are struggling with hearing, I just wanted to point out Dr. Christine Pickup at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert would like to open your world to new sounds and experiences. She's got a new hearing device that she is actually working with people, and it helps the brain better detect sounds and will improve your hearing beyond any other hearing aid on the market. There's a 2 week free trial available. You can call today and schedule your personal fitting appointment. Our Dr. Pickup's number is 312-0957. That's 312-0957. You can also go online to mountharrisonaudiology.com. And what we'll talk about coming up, we've got gosh, this is longer than my grocery list.
It is.
We got more with Kelton Hatch on the way from Idaho Fish and Game in just a moment. It's unfortunately, it's down to 23. Joining us in the studio, Kelton Hatch. He's here from Idaho Fish and Game this morning. Also, if you've got a comment or question for him during the course of the hour, feel free to give us a telephone call at 736 0300. That's 736 0300. And speaking of just some outdoorsy things, not far away actually from his office is the Last Stand Survival Shop. And I just wanted to mention, if I could, one more time this morning, they have pistol and rifle classes that are just getting started, and they're smaller classes, so you get closer attention from the instructor, beginners through experts. So there's a mix of people in there too as well. They have gunsmiths on site, gunsmiths who can actually build you some high quality merchandise, including custom AR builds. And they have food storage that they will sell you. In fact, even 72-hour kits. So if we get a nasty storm that shuts things down for a few days, you'll still be in business. And we wanted to mention it's a veteran owned shop. They have discounts for firefighters, paramedics, military, law enforcement, NRA members, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And if you go to Facebook, you can see a lot more in the way of what they have available. Check out that Facebook page at Last Stand Survival Shop. Kelton Hatch, as we mentioned, in studio with us this morning. And I love this Fish and Game Christmas. This has got to be a topic near and dear to a lot of people.
You bet. What better gift than to give something that lasts 365 days, like a hunting and fishing license? I just wanted to mention that if you're having troubles coming up with a stocking stuffer, spin by the office. You can get a gift certificate. Had a guy the other day that called. He says, "Well, I can get a gift certificate anywhere, can I?" And I go, "For a hunting license?" I sure at Anniversary Sporting Goods stores. And he says, "I want to make sure my kids spend it on a license. I'll buy it at Fish and Game." And so, because,
Hmm.
but you can come by if they're kids that are at home still. You can purchase their licenses. I buy them and put them in my kids' stockings because I'm going to end up buying them anyway.
Yeah.
And so, but it's a good gift that lasts all year round, and you need a new one starting January 1st if you're planning on hunting. Bringing in the new year right. And so
Yeah.
by getting out and doing some waterfowl hunting or something like that. So
So what the newcomers probably would have a question. What do they cost?
if you're brand new to the area, and you don't want to buy a non-resident license, you need to be here 6 months. So that's our non-resident deal. But for just a combination's about $35. Gives you a hunting and fishing license for a sportsman's package that gives you deer, elk, turkey, mountain lion, bear, steelhead, salmon, salmon, um, wolf, black bear, mountain lion is $124. So it's really a good price. It's a huge savings on there. You can also buy 3-year licenses, and I was going to mention that if you've got a kid that's turning 18 this year, buy them a 3-year license. If they're still 17, and that will allow them to have that junior license and purchase junior tags for the next 3 years. If you wait until they're 18, then they're buying adult tags and adult licenses, and it costs quite a bit more. Like I'll do that for all my kids because it's just a little savings. And the reason I bring it up is we lose a lot of those kids from the hunting population because they're taking off to go to college and they don't have as much money, disposable income, and so if you get them something like that, it'll keep them in the field during those first years in college.
And of course, when they come home on break, they like to go out sometimes and hunt.
Oh, you bet. My daughter, she comes home every year and shoots carp with us, or goes fishing, or comes home and goes deer hunting. And so you bet it's a gift that it's fun to have it, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Just he mentioned his daughter, so it's a gift idea for both your boys and your girls in that situation. We've got a caller with us too. Caller, you're on the air with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, you two. And before I forget it, Merry Christmas to both of you and Happy New Year there.
Hey, thanks.
And these trees, they're going to cut all these trees down because they say what the hell they say chickens need to have the bare ground and not the trees.
You're probably talking about junipers.
Yeah, the junipers. Where I've been hunting a couple places, and that's where you find these birds. Is you'll see them in some of these juniper trees, and when you go in that area, there they are. I don't
And
know if they use it for a hideout or if they need the tree to hide from the coyotes or what's going on, but I can't understand why they say they need to cut the trees down to save the birds. That don't make a bit of sense to me at all.
well, I'll talk about it just a little bit. I appreciate the question because that is one of those things. Junipers have really encroached a lot. I mean, when you start looking at historical photos across south central Idaho, our juniper population's more than 10 times. They really spread fast. They're a huge draw on water. Um, Several thousand gallons each a year, long roots, long tap roots. Underneath the tree, you get zero grass or zero forb growth. Deer and pretty much every other critter needs some type of forb, plants, grasses, and stuff to live. We want to keep some of the juniper in for thermal cover and for hiding cover for wildlife. But what the goal it's is to remove some of it to allow more forage growth and more. It'll just overall help the wildlife populations. We believe we don't want to remove it all, but we've worked pretty close with the BLM on a lot of these projects. We've seen some really good increases in wildlife populations in there, as well as utilizations of the area. And when you get over by like Jim Sage or down out of Albion and those places, I mean, you've got pretty much monocultures, single species of just junipers in some of those areas, and we have no wildlife usage just because the juniper patches are so big. And so they're kind of trying to cut those into mosaic patterns where they leave some of the juniper for hiding cover, but it is a concern. I appreciate the question.
Want to thank him for the call. And you've got to realize you mentioned the amount of water these things suck up.
Hmm.
That's a critical resource in this part of the country.
Well, especially for sagebrush is a huge component for a feed source for deer and sage grouse and pygmy rabbits and most all of our native species. When you get junipers in there, it actually kills sagebrush off. And we do need some new revitalization of some of our sagebrush brush because some of it's so old and decadent. But it's just one of those projects that they can do that helps overall wildlife, and so it's a pretty good project.
Want to thank the caller as well. And just to point out the telephone number 736-0300. We've got a break coming up in just a moment. So we'll have to delve back into Kelton's laundry list here in just a few minutes. We still have a lot to talk about this morning. So
Yeah, lots of little things, fun things, and just things to remember this time of year.
we've got more on the way. It's 24. It's 9:30. Kelton Hatch here from Idaho Fish and Game. Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Guest in the studio with us, Kelton Hatch. He's here from Idaho Fish and Game. He joins us on a monthly basis and gives us an update about just some events and other projects that his department is working on. He also takes some of your telephone calls as well. We're at 9:33. It's 24. Bill Colley with you as well this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Thank a landowner. We've heard enough people call over the last couple of years about people actually crossing through their land without asking permission and the like, but thank a landowner.
You know, this what a better time of year is it to write a thank you note for the guys or send a Christmas card or a smoked turkey or some salami or some candy or cookies to the guy that lets you hunt on his property or to the lady that owns the land that lets you hunt on their property. As the population continues to grow in this area, we continue to lose more and more access to private lands. And so I guess this is just a little thing. Think of somebody else, go out, tell them thanks for allowing you to hunt there, and it will go a long ways in the future to get on there. I guarantee it. As they get more and more pressure, they'll remember you for doing the little things, and it'll help keep a place open for you to waterfowl hunt or pheasant hunt or whatever you're chasing. It'll help you in the future. So just be cognizant that a lot of wildlife is raised on private property and then feeds off into public grounds also for people to hunt. So it's just kind of that time of year to do something nice for somebody else.
And this time of year, you also have this: give wildlife a break.
And this sounds kind of like I'm being critical of why we're chasing deer in a helicopter. We try to limit our pressure on them, and I do know that we're running back fat off these deer when we're doing it. However, we believe that it's critical enough for us to get the information. What we're trying to do is limit people pushing deer with their snow machines. It's one thing if we go do it one day, but then every day that week somebody's up snow machining or cross country skiing or mountain biking or whatever they're doing and running their dogs. Dogs and pets are horrid this time of year because those dogs will get out and run those deer. Deer are living on the back fat of their backs right now. It's cold outside. The snow's deep. You get up and towards Magic, there's not many deer up there anymore. They've all moved down to the Front Range because we've got 40 inches of snow up high. There's quite a bit of snow even, when you just go out here in the desert. I mean, there's about 8 inches on the level. These deer they're digging for all their food. So is the elk. Just when you see deer, it's fun to see. Take your binoculars, look at them, but kind of give them a wide berth. Don't push them and it's not a problem if you do it and you're the only one that does it. The problem is the next 100 people that are coming down the road doing the same thing you are, and if all of them do it, and then those animals are completely moving all the time, and so just be cautious about that. Think about wildlife and not to overpush them and stress them.
I just remember when I was a kid and my dad was working as a ranger, and when sometimes the dogs would chase deer out onto the frozen lake, and then of course the deer on ice is just it has no chance.
Yeah.
And I can remember being a kid and how heartbreaking it was to see my dad walk out on the ice. He pulled the car over, he walked out on the ice, and then took out his revolver and took the deer out of its misery.
Yeah.
And that's that's the problems. And as he told me later on, he said he often had to shoot the dogs too because he said dogs that chase a deer once will then decide they're going to chase deer all the time.
And that's exactly right. And the sad thing is we end up having to do that as officers ourselves. And it's really difficult when, I mean, I love animals. I love dogs. I hate harvest. I mean, I'll harvest deer, I'll harvest elk, um, birds, things that I'm utilizing. But to shoot one out of season to me, I mean, we had to kill that bighorn sheep, and that was heartbreaking to me. It was kind of interesting to me because I had put in for a bighorn sheep for 16 years to finally harvest my own bighorn sheep, and this one was in trouble, and so we went and harvested it, but it wasn't under the rules of the game, and it was really a sad situation, because it had wandered out of its range. Well, this happens with dogs. This happens with deer that are injured. There was some dogs in Boise this last week that were out chasing geese in Boise downtown, fell through the ice. One of the dogs got stuck under the ice and expired, and the other dog, they search and rescue, put their lives in danger to save these dogs. But keep your dogs under control and manage them, and you won't have the issues that we won't have to worry about things like that.
We've got more coming up with Kelton Hatch in just a few minutes. We have a number of topics still to get to, but we'll do that in the next 20 minutes. I do want to point out right now we've got 24. And if I could just mention again quickly, our friends at Last Stand Survival Shop in Jerome, they have a full time gunsmith on staff, and they're building custom orders, including custom ARs. This is high quality merchandise, we should point out. Pistol and rifle classes getting started, and they are small, so you get plenty of attention from the instructor. And you can also drop by the shop if you like, and you can pick up long-term food storage, but also 72-hour kits. We've been talking about a little ice the last few days. Well, if we get a big ice storm, you might need one of those. It's a veteran-owned store. Discounts for military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, NRA card members, we should say member discounts. And you can also find out more details about Last Stand Survival Shop on Facebook. Go to Facebook and look up Last Stand Survival Shop, and you can see all the specials they currently have. In the meantime, it's 9:40. It's 22. You're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Kelton Hatch, our studio guest this morning. He's here for another, call it 18 minutes, 17 minutes. Coming up on 9:43, it's 24. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Of course, Kelton representing Idaho Fish and Game. And if you've got a comment or question, telephone number this morning would be 736-0300. Haystack fencing projects. That sounds interesting.
I just wanted to bring this up. I try to bring up so people just don't think we're sitting around googling things on our computer at the office. I try to bring up some of the projects we actually work on.
That's what I do all day.
Yeah. Well, that's part of your job, figuring out what's in the know, what's going on. But this last fall and summer, we put in 15 permanent stack yards in the Wood River Valley. Across the state, we spent about $500,000 this year on putting in permanent stack yards. And people go, why a permanent stack yard? Well, what these are stack yards where we have major depredation issues from elk. Elk will hit these stack yards. Well, how much hay can an elk eat? Well, enough to tip over the haystack and kill the elk. Last year, we had close to 50 elk that were killed by haystacks falling on them, jumping into farm equipment, breaking legs.
Can you take them home and eat them, though, after they do that?
If we're there early enough.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those haystacks tip over them in the middle of the night, and then it takes a few minutes to pick 1-ton bells up off elk.
Yeah.
And, but we try to utilize the meat on the animals we can, but we had a bunch of issues last year up there, and it's been a long time in coming, but we've put up 15 stack yards up there this year. And then several across other parts of the state. We was actually able to get a grant from the Wood River planning and zoning up there, and they was able to help us with the installation of those. And so it's kind of a cool project. We're just hoping to eliminate problems for the landowners up there.
Now, when we were young, of course, the hay was put into a small bale and it went into a loft. And
Yeah.
today, of course, you've got the big round bales. So they'll nibble at the bottom of that, right? That's
Well,
the problem. They nibble it out from
yeah.
underneath.
Well, they got those big 1-ton square bales is what our
Yeah.
major issues are, and they're stacked 4 high, and then they'll eat those bottom, or they'll get in there. The bulls will rake those bales with their antlers, break the strings on a few of them, and when you break the strings on the bell on the bottom and they eat a little bit of it, then all of a sudden that bell has no support, so it collapses. Then all those, you've got 4 more ton or 3 more ton
Hmm.
falling down, and 6,000 pound even on a big elk crushes him pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so, and it's just, I mean, it's just a pain in the behind for the landowners because, I mean, imagine the strings being broke, and then every day you're out there pitchforking a ton of hay onto a wagon to go feed your cows because the strings have been broken. So this is going to be better. I mean, it's not like we've got one feed station up there in the Wood River Valley, and that's at the Warm Springs feed station. That is implemented to keep elk. It's not to keep elk from starving to death. Elk can figure out how to survive. I mean, elk are big ungulates. They can eat just about anything and receive nutrition out of it. They can eat branches, they can eat twigs, they can eat grass, they can eat hay. The reason they like the hay is it's kind of like the reason I like steak versus chicken or steak versus vegetables. I mean, it's really good, and so they can get it easy. They don't have to work, and so they end up in these haystacks. They can go make a living either further out in the valley or up on south facing slopes, but it's just easier to make a living in a person's haystack. We've got this feed site that's going right now in Warm Springs, and that feed site goes just to keep elk from migrating down into Warm Springs and down into Ketchum. Last year, we also had about 25 or 30 elk die from eating Pacific yew or Japanese yew.
Hmm.
It's not just toxic to elk. If you got Japanese yew in your yard, you probably want to get it pulled out because if your dogs eats it, your kids eat it, the cats eat it, it's poisonous to everything that ingests it. Elk were just, down in the valley, they start nibbling on it. It killed a bunch of them last year. So our goal is to make sure try to keep those elk out of the valley as much as possible so people aren't hitting them. We had elk falling into window wells last year in houses. We've got a lot of snow already this year. Pomerel's open for the year. Sun Valley's I mean, they've got a lot of snow. And so we're just trying to get prepared for winter.
That famous picture last year of that elk in the basement where the deputies were
That just makes you grin every time you think about that.
holding that mattress. They had
Yeah.
the mattress up as a shield while they
Yeah.
were trying to shoo him out of there.
Yeah. Well, you get a 400-pound animal in there that's a little bit wound up, because
Yeah.
it's used to open spaces, and they'll run right over you.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the mattress worked really well. I still feel bad for the cleaning bill or the person that had to go clean that carpet because elk and nerves and all that stuff in the basement does not leave a pretty sight.
The other day, in fact, I saw a video on television of a deer that got was into a mall and he was leaping over the food court tables and as they were trying to get him out. And my mom told me a story years ago. She was in one of her favorite diners and somebody opened the back door for a delivery and a deer came running through. I think it was just a small buck. He wasn't fully grown yet, but he came running through, but he just had enough in the way of antlers. She said there was a woman sitting at the counter sipping coffee who never noticed as he ran right by her. Then he leaped through the front window, which had a lot of little panes in it.
Oh.
And she said you could see him running down the street with one of those window panes hanging off of his antlers.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so they can be very dangerous. Get out of the way.
Get out of the way, yeah. And so, yeah, and that's our goal is to keep the elk at bay. We had a video sent in to us. It's almost gone viral. Of there's in Ketchum and a herd of elk stopped traffic, all bulls, jumped into some horse paddocks there, and it's like it's turning into Estes Park. I don't know that that's the goal that we want.
Right,
We want to
right.
keep elk as wild as possible.
And then you've got a note here. It says, I found a radio collar. What should I do? Because obviously people sometimes come across these things.
Well, we do, and since I had talked about radio collars earlier, that we're putting these radio collars. If you find those, give us a call. Those collars are worth a few $100s. If you're out hunting and you shoot an animal that has a radio collar, that's fine. because that's part of our study on determining how many animals are harvested or killed by cars or what type of predators. See, if a mountain lion kills that animal, it gives us uh, a mort signal. It's a mortality signal. What happens? It's got a mercury switch in it. And so when the animal quits moving for over 4 hours, it increases the tone. It starts beep, 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 beep. We can walk into that collar and determine what had killed it. And so, but if you find those, sometimes we've got a bunch of the ones that they rot off. They're just put on with rubber bands. These surgical rubber bands or surgical tubing, I should say. The sun, after 6 months, rots that. The collar falls off. Then we can go recover that collar and put it on a deer the next year. We put a magnet on it to save the battery. Um, if you find those, they're worth a small reward. It's 5 or 20, some a few bucks for that. But bring those into us or give us a call. The green ear tag, however, if you harvest an animal that has a green ear tag, please call the number that's on that green ear tag, because that means that animal was in trouble somewhere. He was either a bear in a campground or a moose that was downtown Twin, or sometimes that's a drug ear tag. You need to call us and we'll tell you when that animal had the drugs in it.
Mhm.
And typically, we try not to release any animals in an area that they can be harvested after we do that, but they do have a green ear tag in them. And as long as they've been running around for 60 days, they're clean. Uh, there are no drugs left in their system and they're okay to be eaten.
Now, we're coming up on the last few minutes here. This time of year, you have been a proponent for a long time, especially at Thanksgiving and Christmas, of having wild game on the dinner table.
You bet. I mean, I like what's growing under your own fig tree, you know. I mean, I like local foods, and what's more local than wild game?
When you talk about this time of year, I was watching A Christmas Carol the other day, and of course, I guess the tradition had been at one time in places like England to have goose,
Goose, you bet. I
and
still have a lot of friends that have goose.
yeah, and that most people I don't even think in modern America have tried it. It's a different type of meat, obviously, than a turkey.
It is. It's a little darker. It can have a gamey taste unless you take care of it. Um, but no, there's some great recipe books out. There's some in order to be able to have that kind of table fare. You know, we typically will have a big Chinese feed of chuckers or game birds, rough grouse, or we'll have and some venison, things like that. We'll just cook it up and we'll have that for New Year's, or we'll have some salmon or steelhead or something like that for Christmas. And it just I enjoy that just for us, just because it's just a little bit different.
And growing up as a kid, we had a lot of neighbors who loved pheasant,
Hmm.
and that's another one. It's unique compared to a lot of other things you'd have on the table.
It is, and I mean, and it's fun because I may have told this story once before. It's always interesting, especially if you can get your children involved in it. Because my son, he was 8 or 9 when he first harvested his first turkey, and we got done saying the blessing on the food, and he says, "Well, did you guys forget something?" And I'm sitting here going, "No." He says, "Well, you forgot to thank me for the meat." But these kids have a sense of pride, especially if they can participate in the meal, and I mean, if they've got their turkey on the table, that's pretty cool for a kid to be, well, this is what I help provide the family. And I mean, yeah, dad drug him out there or mom drug him out there in order for him to harvest it or her, but it just kind of brings that family in. I don't know. I like that type of stuff. I like the homemade dinner rolls. I mean, Rhodes bacon syrup are great, but grandma's homemade stuffing with the gizzard and the liver and the heart chopped up in it. Some people are going, ugh, but that's tradition.
Right.
I grew up having mincemeat pie every year. It's a tradition that I hope we can get back to. But it was my grandmother would come down and peel all the meat off the deer's neck. You shoot a deer, and the first thing she was down there cutting all the meat off, and then she was back making a fresh batch. She was chopping up apples and putting raisins and deer neck meat, and she was making her stuffing for mincemeat pie. And then she'd bottle that, and over the winter, she'd just make a pie crust, stuff the mincemeat in there, warm it up, and it was a great winter pie. And those are kind of fun traditions to have.
And in fact, I had an aunt, my aunt March, God rest her soul. She'd make us the mincemeat pies every year,
Hmm.
and absolutely loved them. And I didn't even have any idea until I was an adult what was in them. They were delicious, and
Yeah.
that's why I liked them.
Yeah, and the mincemeat you buy nowadays doesn't have a lot of deer meat in it if you buy one from the store, but I mean, a lot of those old traditional, I mean, they were a winter pie to use scrap meats and things like that to feed a family. And but it kind of brings those traditions. Just it's a little different. I know sometimes it's a lot of work. My wife is not a huge cook of wild game, so I jump in, and that's where I mean, I've grown up with it, and she eats it all the time. She it's one of our major dietary, you know, foods, and so we eat a lot of eat a lot of game meat. But it's kind of fun just to have something different.
And I was going to say for a lot of people out there that those old traditions they're tough to maintain because people in this day and age they move so much they don't have a lot of the extended family around them.
Hmm.
Sometimes bringing some of those dishes in is all you need because it spurs those old memories though when you were with all of those people.
Well, and it is. One of my favorite gifts to give people is some smoked salmon for Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And you can go buy it, but and mine's probably not as good as a lot of the stuff you buy out in the store because it's my own concoction. But it's something that we made, something we caught, and it's kind of fun to throw out there and not a lot of people get that,
Hmm.
but because you've got X amount of it. But it's fun, and I love the holiday season. I mean, my kids will be coming in. You're around family, you're around friends, and so just have people get out there. And I know people can get lonely this time of year too. I do know that. Um, get in with a church group. Get in with a social group in town. Get out and do something for somebody else. And I think you'll have a good holiday season.
We want to thank you for coming by. We'll do this again roughly second or third week of January.
Yeah, we'll get in here and get talking. Hopefully, we get a few more calls next month. I think everybody must be all, they're stressed out down at the mall trying to get their last Christmas presents.
I
Just
got all that done.
swing by the fishing game, get a sportsman's pack, just get a gift certificate, and you're done.
I got all that done a long time ago.
Oh, well, good.
I
You see,
would I learned when especially when my daughter and niece were little,
uh huh.
I would actually shop for them in February during the sales when the real sales started and then hide the stuff. I had a good place for hiding it and then I'd wrap it at Thanksgiving, hide it again. So all you had to do was get it out for Christmas.
See, I don't know that I like planners like you,
Yeah.
because your life is less stressful than mine.
You'll see Kelton Hatch again in a few weeks.
Have a Merry Christmas.
A wonderful thought. And coming up on 10 o'clock, Rush Limbaugh's program is next. Bill Colley saying, God willing, the creeks don't rise. That'll allow me to come back and do this all over again tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 o'clock. Have a great day, everyone.